Everyone, and welcome to Politics on Sunday, reaching you live from Abuja, the nation's capital. I am Femi Akandes. Well, let's begin the show by telling you that the federal government says it will be prosecuting Daily Trust newspaper for falsehood and inciting journalism capable of gaslighting the country and causing regional disaffection. The Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris, disclosed these at a joint briefing with the Minister of Budget and National Planning, Abubakar Atiku Bagudu, to provide clarity on the Samoa agreement which the country signed on June the 28th at the Organization of African, Caribbean and Pacific States Secretariat in Brussels, Belgium. He said the federal government would lodge a formal complaint to the Newspapers Proprietors Association of Nigeria, as well as use every lawful means to seek redress in the court of law. This matter has already put the government in trouble with some groups across the country. But as it stands, the government says it is deliberate falsehood. The Minister of Information says he did not envisage that Daily Trust and the people behind this falsehood could descend to the reckless level of attempting to set the country on fire by falsely accusing the government of signing a deal to promote LGBTQI. But once the federal government's decision to rebuke Daily Trust in this manner sets it against the principles of press freedom, well, we'll find out. Well, moving on now, President Bola Tinubu has gotten another mandate to continue as chairman of the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS Authority of Heads of State and Government. This decision was taken in a closed-door meeting of the 65th ECOWAS Ordinary Session. President Tinubu, whose first term will expire on July the 9th, was elected by a unanimous decision of fellow heads of government at the 65th Ordinary Session of the authority held at the State House in Abuja. In his acceptance speech, the president said he has accepted to continue to deliver on this service with the great men and women on this democratic journey, to serve the interest of ECOWAS and build democratic values on the structure he inherited. President Tinubu is saddled with the responsibility of uniting the region and standing against unconstitutional change of government among member countries, and also form an alliance against terrorism. President Tinubu, as chairman of ECOWAS, is also expected to reach out to 3 member countries that have decided to pull out from the regional bloc and persuade them against this move. Well, joining me now in the studio to give a perspective to the re-election of President Bola Tinubu and other matters of national importance is the spokesman of the president. He is a special advisor to President Bola Tinubu on media and public affairs, Chief Ajuri Ngelale. Welcome to the program.
Always a privilege to be with you.
Yes, President Bola Tinubu unanimously elected for a second term as, or to continue as the chairman of the Authority of ECOWAS Heads of State and Government. Why did the ECOWAS Heads of State decide to take this decision? And doesn't the president have so much on his plate already in terms of governing the country?
Of course, His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is a man with many responsibilities, wearing many hats, and successfully delivering on many different fronts. It is no surprise to us that the collective wisdom of the ECOWAS Authority of Heads of State and Government came to the conclusion that given the boldness and the decisiveness and the wisdom with which His Excellency Mr. President has conducted affairs as the chairman of the ECOWAS Authority of Heads of State and Government, that indeed he needed more time to successfully execute on the mandate he was initially given. You know, I think a lot of times people may, kind of rightly reference the fact that there has been this geopolitical turbulence with respect to some of the tendencies playing out across the West African sub-region, the interplay of forces that go well beyond the African continent, kind of interfering with internal affairs of various countries in the sub-region to the extent that they can essentially try to carve it up into territories of geopolitical loyalty and all of the things that we've seen, that even in spite of those challenges, we have a president who's focused, who's fixed on the ball, his eyes fixed on the ball, and who's able to galvanize the support of all of his colleagues to gather and build consensus on the way forward, which is why, in addition to kind of dealing with the geopolitical issues, which the president had obviously today spoken very clearly about the need for all member states of ECOWAS to fulfill their financial obligations to the community. For example, ensuring that the financial base is there to undergird the kind of reforms that need to take place with respect to the optimization of an ECOWAS standby armed force, for example, in addition to the delivery of services to the people of the community. I think what's often lost in the conversation about ECOWAS and the chairmanship of His Excellency Mr. President of ECOWAS is the fact that under his chairmanship there have been a kind of a plethora of internal reforms that are taking place, and really an emphasis on people-oriented project delivery, right? Ensuring that ECOWAS is not merely a talk shop or a place where heads of state come together to build consensus on issues equally facing them, but also is a body prepared and positioned to deliver on, people-facing projects in the water sector, in the road and railway sector, ensuring that we build out the connective infrastructure across rail, road, gas pipeline, and the like, to ensure that the people of the community understand that there is an economic benefit and an economic dividend for their involvement in the community. And ultimately, that's the message the president sent. That is the message that has resonated amongst his colleagues within the ECOWAS Authority of Heads of State and Government, and of course, that is the message ultimately that has seen to his re-election as the chairman of the ECOWAS Authority of Heads of State and Government. And
as it stands now, ECOWAS is also divided. What's the president doing, or what will he do now to bring back Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso, to return them to the fold?
Well, let's be clear about the fact that whatever purported position is being kind of bandied about by the three figureheads of the military regimes that had taken over power, not by the collective will or vote or say of their people, but by sheer force of arms. Let's not conflate whatever view they are presenting in small meeting rooms with the view of the millions of people who have not had a say in who governs them within those three territories. Being that as it may, we are also pragmatic about the fact that these individuals have taken over power, albeit forcefully and without the consent of their people, and as such, we would be naive not to, create bridges and mechanisms to be able to communicate and continue to go into the kinds of discussions that would ultimately lead to a normalization within those countries, within those member states, and ultimately ensure that the people remain the focus. The chairman of the ECOWAS Authority of Heads of State and Government, in the person of Mr. President, is not thinking just about playing to a gallery and getting some people around the table or saying all is well. What he's focused on is the people of Burkina Faso, the people of Niger Republic, the people who are being denied their right to inform the process of electing their leadership and being denied the right to good governance as a result of what's going on. And he knows that the quickest way to rectify that is ultimately by bringing together some of these autocratic forces within these countries to ensure that ultimately the conditions in those countries are brought to a stable normal, and that's the focus of the president.
Okay, and the feelers we're getting is that these heads of state believes the president has that capacity to return them to the fold, and that's why they unanimously decided to re-elect him to continue.
Well, it's also worth noting, Femi, that in the wisdom of the president, he's also appointed the president of Senegal, President Faye, who obviously, member. As you know, the newest member, as obviously the leader of a Francophone-speaking country, strategically to be the special envoy to these three countries that are having some adverse adverse situations play out with respect to the rule of law and democracy. So I think that kind of stroke of wisdom and sagacity is something that I think hopefully will yield results, not just for the people of the Francophone countries, but ultimately for the stability of the entire ECOWAS community of member states.
Okay, let's talk about the signing of the EU-Samoa agreement. It's been in the news. It's been quite controversial. The government has also gotten a lot of backlash and maybe misrepresentation from what we are now hearing from the Minister of Information. And now the government is even wielding the big stick by deciding to take legal action against a media outfit that published what the federal government now says it's falsehood. My question now to you is, wouldn't this be considered as an infringement on press freedom for an administration that prides itself as promoting and upholding press freedom?
Thank you very much, Femi. I think, there is a tendency sometimes in public analysis towards short memory. What do I mean by that? I'm not going to name the former president who was involved, but there was a time in this country after 1999 when we had, quote unquote, gone into civilian rule, in which you had, a sitting president essentially tear down a media station, like literally take tractors and take bulldozers and literally just knock down a media station that was giving out information or opinion in a way that was not in line with that president's own views. Those are draconian steps that would be taken by a government that is not abiding by the principles of media freedom or freedom of expression. I think what the Minister of Information and National Orientation has described is a process that is very much in line with the rule of law and with taking up the available legal remedial measures in the court of law to be able to deal with any potentially objectionable or potentially illegal act by any entity, whether it's private or public. So I don't think any Nigerian looking at that, looking at a potential court case between the federal government and a media house would see that as a draconian step. I think that they would see that as a legitimate exercise of the right of private and public entities in this country to seek justice in the court of law. Now, be that as it may, let me also add to this conversation that I think it's important that we not conflate, the fact that it is the Minister of Information and National Orientation coming out to say, look, we're potentially going to go to court for legal redress on this issue. That should not be meant to mean, that should not mean that that the federal government of Nigeria is just defending itself, because ultimately it's actually defending the people of the country. How is that? If, for example, based on fake news, based on outright falsehood, something that has no basis in fact or verifiable information whatsoever, you put something on the front page of a newspaper and all of a sudden there are mass protests in a particular part of the country where religious sensitivities have been stoked into inflammation, and where you now have institutions being burnt down, people killed, and all the things that can happen. We've seen what happened, for example, in Rwanda on the basis of stuff coming out of a radio box. We are in a position where we understand that if something like that broke out on the basis of falsehood, it is the Nigerian people who will suffer. It is Nigerian citizens who will die on the street. It is Nigerian businesses owned by Nigerian private citizens that will be burned down and that will be looted, and all the things that we have seen before. So when we are saying we're going to take a certain media entity to court on this issue, it is based on our defense of the Nigerian people and their rights to live in a peaceful and stable country. So I really want to emphasize that. Now, what are the merits of the kind of controversies around the quote-unquote Samoa agreement, right? Essentially, let's be clear about the baseline fact that there is no such clause that signs us up to take an action on LGBTQ-related matters in exchange for any kind of economic relief. That clause does not exist. On the basis of the falsehood that was mass disseminated by a certain media entity, that falsehood was turned on its head as some sort of a truth that doesn't exist.
Do you think that was deliberate?
Whether it was, I can't read into the hearts or motivations or intentions of anybody or any entity, but clearly we understand as a baseline, as two journalists sitting at this table, we know that the baseline of our profession is to ensure that we anchor every story, every report on verifiable fact, on irrevocable fact and data, right? In this case, you had a huge headline with a report underneath it that was not based on fact at all, but based on sheer sentiment and falsehood. And that's the kind of thing that we think can create negative ramifications, not for the Nigerian government, but for the Nigerian people. And we are, Mr. President, as the head of the government and as the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the country, his sacred oath and mandate is to ensure that he is upholding ultimately the defense and protection of Nigerian citizens, and it applies even in this format.
Okay, let's talk about the economy now. Even President Bola Tinubu agrees that Nigerians are going through some kind of hardship, of course, caused by what the government says are necessary reforms. And the president just inaugurated the Presidential Economic Coordination Council and also rolled out measures to strengthen the economy. We have seen the president talking about the need to collaborate more with the private sector, with focus on, the power sector, ensuring that the country ramps up crude oil production, food security, health, social welfare, and all of that. But what's the timeline? How soon will Nigerians also really feel the impact of these new measures that have been rolled out?
Thank you very much. So I think I want to, first of all, predicate what you've just referred to on the baseline fact that this is a continuation and an escalation of economic bailouts that the president has already been implementing. So, for example, right now, on the macroeconomic reform side of it, Nigerians are seeing now really for the first time in the last several years, in recent memory certainly, where you have a total unification of the exchange rates. I mean, we've been working toward this thing for over a year now, and now Nigerians are seeing that it's done and that the exchange rate is stable and that we've paid off, for example, all of the $7 billion plus in foreign exchange debt obligations that we had to various entities that we were owing. So we have a totally different picture based on the hard work that has been done by this president and this administration. With that said, when you talk about timelines, what should Nigerians expect? I think we should just go into that very quickly. As you rightly alluded to, His Excellency Mr. President did, inaugurate the Presidential Economic Coordination Council, essentially mandated to create a total union between public sector economic managers in the country at all levels, and also ensuring that you have the private sector at the highest levels engaged directly in a sustainable and consistent format, where you have the private sector informing policy design and implementation hand in hand with the public sector. It's something that Nigerians have long sought for. It's something the president has now put in place with giants such as Alhaji Aliko Dangote and of course Mr. Tony Elumelu. But in addition to that, the president has also factored in the power of the people, right? The power of the Nigerian worker, by making sure that we get those critical unions at the table and critical, associations at the table. So you have, for example, the Director General of the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, who's a part of that committee, and many, many others. The point here is that nobody has a monopoly on knowledge or wisdom. This president is humble. He understands that, and he's ready to tap into the best brains the country has to offer, irrespective of their political affiliations, irrespective of what part of the country they come from, or irrespective of what God they worship, in order to get the Nigerian economy to where we all want it to be. Now, with that said, as he inaugurated that committee, that council, what he also did was he announced the 2 trillion naira economic stabilization package, right, which involves multiple sectors of impact, and he put timelines on them, as you somewhat alluded to. So, for example, in the energy subset of the economic stabilization package, the president has clearly mandated the council to ensure that we move on-grid electric power generation from the current 4,500 megawatts in terms of its consistent level to a minimum of 6,000 megawatts. That's an addition of 1,500 megawatts over the course of the next 6 months. That is the mandate that he has given to that council, and he has reason to believe that that is going to be fully executed and effectively so. On the oil and gas side of it, His Excellency Mr. President mandated the Council as part of that package with funding attached and projects attached to this mandate to ensure that we take oil production from the current kind of equivocation between 1.4 million and 1.6 million barrels per day to a minimum of 2 million barrels per day over the course of the next 12 months. So on-grid electric power supply, 4,000 megawatts to 6,000 megawatts over the next 6 months, but then oil production from the equivocated band of 1.4 to 1.6 to over 2 million barrels per day within the next 12 months. Then, in addition to that, the President said, look, we have to deal with the real sector. We also have to deal with those labor-intensive sectors that will create opportunities and employment for our people while dealing aggressively with food inflation. So he's also given the mandate, again, attached with the available finance. It's already set and ready, as well as the specific projects that will get us to this point. But he's given the mandate to the Council to ensure that in agriculture and food production and food security, that we move from approximately 127 million metric tons of food production in the country amongst small shareholder farmers to 135 million metric tons of food production by the end of this year. That's going to be a combination of factors, right? That's going to have to do with putting in place higher quality, high yield seedlings, the provision of that across the country to our farmers. It's also going to ensure that we aggressively deal with this issue of agricultural mechanization, making sure that we have tractors and other mechanical equipments coming into the country and being spread equitably across not just our food belts, but across all states of the Federation, where our smallholder farmers are dealing in mostly antiquated farming practices that limit your yield potential, but then also dealing with, ensuring that we deal with the power issue related to food production and ultimately food distribution and food sales in the country. Right now, we're losing up to 40% of all of our farmers' hard-earned yields because we don't have the kind of rural electrification to ensure that we have refrigeration capabilities, for example, so that foods will be, maintained from the point that they're produced to the point where we can effectively transport them to markets without them spoiling. These are all part of what is inside of the National Stabilization Package, and even in the health subset of the National Stabilization Package. You also have about 5,000 primary health care centers across all states and local governments of the Federation that will now be connected to 24 hours of light through off-grid solar connections, right? So that's going to be done within the next 12 months as well. So there is a multi-sectoral, really robust approach to the economic bailout that's going to be implemented over the course of the next 12 months. And by the way, all of what I've mentioned, within another subset of that, you have the MSME bailout, where we have $650 billion within the economic sustainability stabilization package, going to over 2 million micro, small, and medium-scale enterprises across all local government areas of the Federation. That is direct intervention, and that's not including single-digit interest rate loans into the billions of naira to large-scale manufacturers across all states of the Federation. The last point I want to make, Femi, is the entire national stabilization, economic stabilization package I've just laid out does not include what the President announced just within the last 2 weeks, which is the National Construction and Household Support Program, which is dealing with the direct uplift grant provision. Grant, not loan. This is money we will give out and that we will not have to pay it back, of 50,000 naira per Nigerian family for 100,000 families across all 36 states, in each of the 36 states of the Federation, not to talk of the railways that will be built with the Ibadan to Abuja rail segment, as well as the Lagos to Calabar expressway.
Actually, some people have talked about the need to balance economic development with environmental sustainability and social responsibility. Right. You are also the special envoy to the President, or the special envoy on climate change. Right. Now, help us understand these against the backdrop of that new appointment you have, how the government intends to balance economic development with environmental sustainability and social responsibility.
It's a very important issue, and this is the message that I've been taking to our partners, not just at home, but all across the globe in recent weeks at the highest level, is that President Bola Tinubu is not just dealing with climate change for the sake of, joining a crowd or being cool at COP. He's doing this because he believes that it is a very critical element to his restoration revolution in the country, employing people and creating an inclusive economy where every Nigerian will have the dignity of a job, will have the dignity of steady income in a way that ultimately advances our environment protection goals. So, for example, right now I'm in negotiations with the Nigeria Governors Forum to ensure that each state of the Federation will bring together a quota of young people, a minimum number from each state of young people who will be involved in a mass tree planting exercise across all states of the Federation, across all local government areas of the Federation, but not just planting trees to be seen to be planting trees. These are trees that are what we call economic trees, right? Producing certain food products that can be resold, that can kind of eradicate poverty and provide sustainable incomes for the communities in which they'll be planted. In addition, we're not just planting trees willy-nilly, as has been the case in the past. We are aligning our tree planting strategy in conformity with urban and rural layout planning with the state and local governments to ensure that they abide by the city codes and the building areas of the various states in the rural and urban settings. In addition to that, so that deals with jobs, that deals with income, that deals with sustainable economic development with respect to the planting of economic trees. And we're talking about over 100 million trees, right? And that's within the next 12 months. Then the next point I want to make is right now we had a very important conversation with the former U.S. Special Presidential Envoy John Kerry in Italy, in which he expressed his excitement about President Bola Tinubu's establishment of Nigeria's first green industrial zone and his willingness to come in with a consortia of renewable energy tech manufacturers from the West, from the United States in particular, to build, for example, geothermal power stations and the component parts ultimately that form them, creating jobs and creating wealth for our people. There's really a lot that's going on.
We're out of time, but in 30 seconds, there have been pockets of insecurity, and Nigerians are concerned that this is beginning to roll back the achievement or successes recorded in the fight against insecurity. How is the president concerned and tackling all of this? In 30 seconds, please. We need to wrap up.
Yes, absolutely. So I think Nigerians are well aware of kind of where we were when he took office and where we are now. Everyone knows there's been a lot of progress, but the truth is that all is not yet uhuru and there's still work to be done. But I think if you look at the Northeast where some of these circumstances had come out, that this is a direct result of the immense pressure that we're putting on these terrorist elements. Their leaders have been taken off the field. They're eradicated. They're in the history books now. So for us now, we're going to continue to put that pressure until it's fully gone. But clearly, these kind of desperate hit-and-run attacks that we haven't seen in a number of years are as a result of the pressure we're putting on them, and we will continue until it's over.
All right, thank you so much, Chief Ajuri Ngelale, Special Advisor to President Bola Tinubu on media and public affairs. Well, that's all on our program today. Thank you very much for watching. You can watch this episode again on TVC News YouTube channel. Also watch a repeat at 11 p.m. today. Thank you for watching. I am Femi Akandes. See you next time.